Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Now today I've got a big old video for you, and it is Backlog episode 1. So if you've been a subscriber to me, a couple videos ago, games I bought recently, episode 6, I showed off my backlog, and I was planning to play through all of those games and play through them fully and review them. And so this video is going to be the reviews of those games. 10 reviews in one video. Now if you'd like to go to a specific review, then click anywhere on screen now, click on any game you'd like to see the review for, and you'll be taken straight there. But if you want to watch through the whole video, then sit patiently and the video will begin. So without further ado, let's get the first review started. First off, Final Fantasy VI on PlayStation 1. Let's start off with a little history lesson on this game. Final Fantasy VI was first released on the Super Famicom in 1994 in Japan, and was released in the US on the Super Nintendo later that same year under the title Final Fantasy III. This is because this was the state's third Final Fantasy game, whereas it was Japan's sixth. Unfortunately, it never grazed European Super Nintendo. It wouldn't be released in Europe until 8 years later on the PlayStation. The first Final Fantasy we got was 7, then we got 8 and 9, then we got 4 and 5, then we got 6. So technically Final Fantasy VI was Europe's Final Fantasy VI all along. Who knew? Final Fantasy VI has also been ported to Game Boy Advance and will soon be available on the iOS. Final Fantasy VI was the first game in the series to stray from Final Fantasy's more medieval roots and starts to move more towards sci-fi. The exterior scenery doesn't reflect this much, as they're still very much traditional. In fact, the game is quite a blend of fantasy and sci-fi. You've got castles and villages mixed with factories and magitech. The blend works spectacularly well and everything seems in place. The story starts off with a focus on a girl named Terra, who is a special girl, as she contains the ability to use magic naturally. The villains of the game kidnap Terra and try to use her magic for their advantage. Terra is quickly saved by Locke and his friends, and the main plot comes to fruition. You begin gathering party members to take down the Empire, who plot to use espers to rule the world. Sounds rather black and white, but the plot becomes much more intricate as you gather party members and as the true motives of the Empire's members become clear. Speaking of party members, there are tons and tons, more so than in any other Final Fantasy game, all of whom have unique personalities and deep backstory, more of which is revealed as you progress through the 30 to 40 hours that is the main plot. And there isn't really a main character. You're constantly switching who you control, which allows you to grow bonds with more characters. The characters have outstanding personality, and it is easy to fall in love with more than a few of them. And thanks to the game's advanced sprite work, the subtlest gestures of the characters had a large impact on me as an audience member. For those wondering, my favourite character is Edgar Figaro. He's just so lovable. The core gameplay is very much Final Fantasy. Active time gauges and random encounters and all that jazz makes a return. But this game has tons of cool systems that set it apart from other Final Fantasies and other RPGs. Throughout most of the game you get to choose who is in your party, and every character has a unique ability, so no character plays out the same, and it's not just the traditional magic and attack variant either. Some characters have much deeper abilities. You'll have to experiment to find who you like the best. Most of the characters are balanced, but some just suck in battle. One great system I loved was the Esper system. You attach your characters with Espers that are used as summons, but they also allow your character to learn different magic spells. This is a lot of fun, and I found that it made me actually enjoy grinding because I could fill up my list of spells. You'll find that most of your travelling in the game is spent like in any traditional JRPG. You go from town to world map to dungeon to castle to town to world map, etc. If you've played an old Final Fantasy game before, you know what you're getting into on the exploration front. Final Fantasy VI isn't flawless by any means. It has some small problems. The sprites don't really do the characters' appearances justice, and some characters' sprites look completely different from what they actually look like. Another downer is that you can't tell what items or spells do during battle unless you knew prior, so experimentation might lead to something you didn't want to do. Also, the difficulty can be rather odd. You start off with a feeling of being constantly under-leveled, but then there just comes a point when you're above and beyond any enemy you face, until the end when it just becomes incredibly hard again. These are just nitpicks though. This is an incredible RPG, and is one of the best of its time. Final Fantasy VI just has fantastic characters. Not just the heroes, but the villains have so much personality as well. It has some amazing moments, as well as some very sad ones. It's a special thing when a 16-bit game can make you feel truly emotional. Final Fantasy VI has the goddamn opera house scene. You just can't beat that, it's iconic. The story grows at a fast and exciting pace for a long game such as this. It's definitely text heavy, but the newly animated cutscenes during battle, something implemented for the first time in Final Fantasy VI, helps weave the story into the gameplay nicely. And lastly, the music is top notch. Some of the best in the series, with tracks like Terra's theme, The Decisive Battle and Dancing Mad. It's truly outstanding. And the PS1 just makes it even better since the sound is coming off a disc rather than a cartridge. Overall, what I'm saying is, RPG fans, play Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VII may be a great game, but it owes a lot of what it knows to Final Fantasy VI. I was so late to the party, but I still enjoyed the cake. Dean, you ever wanted to play a game that's Resident Evil 4 but not Resident Evil 4?
No.
Well, that's exactly what I'm going to do today. The second game is Devil May Cry on PlayStation 2.
A sword. Haha. Time to go to work, guys.
I tried twice before to play through Devil May Cry. First time I got through the first level and stopped. Second time I got up to the first boss and stopped. Third time's the charm, right? I actually completed it this time. Honestly, I don't know why I had trouble before. The game's really fun. For those of you who don't know, this game first started off as Resident Evil 4. The developers quickly realised that what they were making was ever so slightly, incredibly different to Resident Evil. They didn't want to ditch the game, however, so they modified it into a new franchise for Capcom, and Devil May Cry was born. Devil May Cry was released exclusively for PS2 in 2001. Thinking about it now, Devil May Cry actually does share a great deal with Resident Evil. I wouldn't put Devil May Cry under the survival horror genre. No, it's definitely an action game, but it definitely borrows a lot of aspects from the survival horror genre. One of the best things about Devil May Cry is the technical elements. The sound effects, music and lighting all work in perfect tandem to create the most creepy atmosphere possible, out of this old castle setting that you'll spend the entire game exploring. The scenery scattered throughout the castle also helps make the game creepy, and I was overall very impressed with the atmosphere in the game. Throughout your adventure, the thing you'll be taking part in most is combat. Dante is equipped with his trusty sword Alistair, which is actually the character Blade Master Alistair from Beautiful Joe, as well as his two pistols, Ebony and Ivory, who are just normal pistols. You can also find more weapons along the way, some which are completely OP. The combat can feel a little button mash heavy at times, but you're scored for how super sexy and stylish you pull off your attacks. And what that basically means is hit people and don't get hit yourself. But there's no block button, so it does take a bit of skill. This type of combat works fine against most enemies, but boss battles are a different story. You'll have to deploy a hit and run tactic to bosses if you don't want to get pummeled. The better you fight and the faster you complete a mission, the more red orbs you'll get, which you can then spend upgrading Dante's abilities. The game's set in one big castle, but it's split up into missions which you can save in between. This makes the game more linear, but it's not 100% linear. You still have to find your way around the castle, fighting many enemies and solving puzzles along the way. Speaking of puzzles, these also give the game a Resident Evil type feel, although the puzzles are really easy, unlike Resident Evil. Most of the levels are literally find item, place item somewhere, and kill enemies along the way. It works fine, but it could have been developed a bit further. You can also find hidden missions if you stray from the regular path. The game has a fixed camera angle, which I've never really minded in games, but in this game it can make the controls feel awkward at times. One complaint I do have with this game is the difficulty. Normal is way too hard. The game gives you one chance to change to easy, and if you think, nah, I can take a challenge, I'm not a wimp, you're completely screwed. I was in this camp, so I restarted the game and chose easy mode. But easy is way too easy, and I breezed through the game so easily that it seemed not worth it. I wish the difficulty was more balanced. It would have made the game more challenging. Overall, I thought Devil May Cry was a pretty okay game. It's not on any of my best game ever lists, but it was pretty fun running through a massive, creepy as hell castle, playing as the badass protagonist that is the original Dante. If you fancy a short, fun action game, I would recommend Devil May Cry, as it has some pretty decent gameplay. I'd actually describe the game as a mix between the NES Castlevanias and the first Resident Evil on PS1. I wouldn't recommend the game for its story, as the story doesn't seem fully fleshed out. Neither do the characters. Seriously, who is Trish and why does Dante care about her?
I came here to seek your help.
Man, that test was whack. You relaxed, dog, right? That test was chill. I totally aced it.
Lucky you, smartass.
Lucky means right, dumbass. So, you got any plans for tonight? Me and Lil D, we plan on going down, to the shack and grab some smoothies. Down?
Sorry, man, no can do. I'm gonna shit myself later tonight playing Silent Hill. I didn't piss myself laughing watching American Pie.
Oh, right on, man, right on. Hey, bro, could you imagine if someone took the game and the film and combined them together?
Yeah, that'd be MLG, dog.
Oh, right on. I mean, could you imagine that?
The third game is Obscure for Xbox.
Hey, Josh, get out of our way.
But I've got to finish up my story on the basketball team for the paper.
Yo, dog, Kenny, chill out, man. Leave him alone. Come on, let's hit the showers.
Okay, the name of this game is actually Obscure, not Obscure. But that raises the question, just who is this Ob? And what is he curing? And shouldn't there be an apostrophe? Oh, I don't know. Anywho, Obscure, featuring music by Sum 41 and Span, was released in 2004 for the Xbox and PlayStation 2 and was developed by the French team Hydrovision Entertainment. I don't know how. The easiest way to describe this game is that it's a perfect mix of Silent Hill and American Pie. And that is literally it. And I must admit, this is something I'm okay with. I do enjoy movies with the stupid cheesy American high school setting. And this game pulls it off well. Most of the characters are total brats, and I hate them all. Except Josh, he seems pretty cool. No, what are you doing? I don't want to see that. There's monsters and shit roaming around, but we still have time for a few booby shots.
Quit it, Josh. This is no time for that.
Come on, we need to record our investigation.
Quiet, someone's there.
Let's move on to the other side of the spectrum. The survival horror side. It actually is not bad. You take control of a number of high school students, each with their own special abilities, and you have to traverse through a large school filled with puzzles, traps and the like. You have a limited number of saves. If you run out of discs, you're screwed. Also, if a character dies, they are gone for good. I really like this aspect. Adds to the tension. Do not lose Josh, because his ability lets you know if there are items around, which is extremely useful. Don't worry about everyone else though. They suck. Obscure has most of the elements needed for a good survival horror game. You have to manage your health supplies and ammo in order to not get stuck later down the line. It also has a map that automatically fills itself in whenever you check rooms, depending on whether they're locked, barred off, etc. I love this feature and found it invaluable when it comes to exploration. Another cool feature that this game has is that you can tape flashlights to your weapons using duct tape. Did Dead Rising 2 rip off Obscure? This feature is very useful because most monsters become easier to defeat if you spray them with a bit of light first. Speaking of the enemies, they actually have rather terrifying designs, if I'm honest. The game can be scary at some points, but it usually is just cheap scares. Thanks to the cheesiness of the whole high school thing overarching the game, it kinda dumbs down the scary factor. The worst thing about the game is the combat. You have a partner with you the whole time, but they don't do anything for the most part. The game doesn't really have a difficulty curve, so the beginning of the game is stupidly hard because you have crap weapons. The game actually gets easier as you go along, as you get better weapons. I actually started the game again on easy because the combat pissed me off so much when I first started. Turns out it didn't change a thing though. The different difficulty settings merely change what items are in what places, nothing more. So I wasted my time listening to Sum 41 for a second time. What am I saying? That's not a waste of time. The game's actual OST is actually really good. The composer Olivier de Riviere did a fantastic job in creating a spine-tingling soundtrack for a horror game. Too bad it was used in Obscure. Oh! I kid, of course. It actually fits in really well. Obscure definitely isn't a teen movie game with survival horror elements. It's the other way around. At its core, it's a survival horror game, and a pretty decent one at that. The cheesiness of the teen movie genre is also blended in nicely, although sometimes I feel like it's a little off balance.
Miss Ashley, what was your reaction when you saw those creatures?
Get lost.
Do you really think you'll get out of here alive?
Don't bug me, okay? I'm calling the cops.
I would have liked it to amplify the cheesiness more to create an even more unique experience. Despite this though, Obscure still is pretty unique, and I'd check it out if you're a survival horror fan. Unfortunately, I didn't get to check it out, but this game can be played entirely with 2 players. I'm sure that's fun.
It's dark in here.
Don't even think about it. Cut it out already. Well, that wasn't scary at all.
No, I can't take it anymore! Why can't they make traditional turn-based JRPGs like they did on the PS2? Hang on a sec. What's this?
Up next, the fourth game is Blue Dragon for Xbox 360.
There you are.
Jiro.
Sorry about earlier.
Yeah, I'm sorry too.
Just before Squaresoft's merged with their rival company Enix, Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of the Final Fantasy series, stepped down from his role as executive vice president of the company. In 2004, he went on to form a new company known as Mistwalker. At this time, people were still in love with their PlayStation 2s, especially thanks to the vast library of top RPGs on the system. But closely arriving was the release of Microsoft's Xbox 360, and people couldn't wait to see what awesome RPGs we could be playing on the first ever HD console. And the first one to arrive was Mistwalker's Blue Dragon in 2006 in Japan and 2007 for the rest of the world. Did it disappoint? No, it did not. Blue Dragon is one of the few traditional turn-based JRPGs that you'll find on any of the 7th generation home consoles. Most RPGs were trying to innovate in new ways for a number of reasons. Square Enix's explanation for the lack of a turn-based combat system in Final Fantasy XIII was that it was difficult to produce a turn-based battle system with static characters on modern consoles. Okay, then how did Blue Dragon manage to pull it off? And pull it off quite well. Blue Dragon's battle system is like Final Fantasy X's. It's turn-based with a clear order of attacks shown at the top of the screen. And it's literally as traditional as you can get in terms of attacks and spells, etc. What is different about Blue Dragon is that you don't actually fight with the characters. You fight with shadows that have linked themselves with the characters. You can level up both your character and the shadow, and both stats affect your character's abilities in and out of battle. You can also grow your team the way you want to, as any character can take on any class they want. Although I didn't change any of the classes from the default, and progress through the game pretty fine. The game has other interesting mechanics. You can charge your attacks and spells, and these make them have different effects. Also, battle encounters aren't random, and smart strategizing can lead to an advantage in battle. Like in Final Fantasy VI, you'll find yourself travelling from towns, to dungeons, to the world map. A rather large world map nonetheless, with a few cutscenes thrown in here and there. The game's story and characters really make this game shine. Although the characters are some of the youngest and childish I've seen in any RPG, the game still explores some really adult themes that may appear to more mature games.
You expect me to just walk away?
This has nothing to do with you!
So what?
Each time it introduces a new character, the game makes a big deal of it. And rightfully so, since you'll be playing with these characters for the next 40 hours or so. More is revealed about the characters as you progress through the game, particularly throughout the second and third disc where the story speeds up tenfold, and it's some exciting stuff. I particularly love the three main starting characters, Shulk, Jiro and Kluk. The voice acting is really great. Many well-known voice actors like Tara Strong, Mona Marshall and Richard Epcar perform prominent voice roles. However, some characters' voices can drive you to insanity. Gotcha! The game's main problem is its difficulty. The first disc, as well as the start of the second disc, is slow, boring, and it's pretty much impossible to die. The enemy AI is designed really well, and they will only use the best strategies to defeat you. The only problem is they can't defeat you because their stats are so freaking low. When the difficulty picks up toward the end of the second disc, it really does pick up to what a normal RPG would be like. But this is about 20 hours into the game. This is when you run into more problems. If you get surprise attacked by the enemy, you have to sit there for a long time while the enemy just pummels you and you can't do anything. Besides this, the game is really fun when the difficulty is on point, especially the boss battles. They did release a hard mode after launch, which I haven't tried, but if you're afraid of being overly bored by the difficulty, I'd suggest you start on hard. Not only is Blue Dragon created by the company that hosts the creator of Final Fantasy himself, the game's staff also includes both famed composer Nobuo Uematsu, who has created yet another beautiful music score, and artist Akira Toriyama, who produces artwork for Dragon Ball and Dragon Quest, and his style is very prevalent in this game's excellent design. When you look at the dream team behind this game, there's no way it can be bad. And it's not bad. It's one of my favourite RPGs of the generation. What it's lacking in difficulty, it more than makes up for in story, music and design. If you're an RPG fan and you haven't yet checked out Blue Dragon, I strongly recommend it, and I very much recommend you push yourself through the game's easy starting point. The first disc is by far the weakest part in this game.
Dean! I just picked up the new PS3.
Yeah? What games did you get for it?
Resistance Fall of Man.
Yeah, what else?
Nothing. There's only one game on it.
Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy.
Dean! They finally released a second game for the PS3.
Yeah, what's it called?
Heavenly Sword.
The fifth game is Heavenly Sword for PlayStation 3. So, Sony had recently launched their brand new top-of-the-range console, one that would grind the Xbox 360 into dust in terms of power. So they needed an exclusive title that would show off the power of the machine. They launched with Resistance Fall of Man, a good game, showed that the PS3 had some horsepower. We then got MotorStorm. Great, first-person shooters and racing games can now be ticked off the checklist. But Sony still needed to show off a brilliant first-party action game. This came in the form of Heavenly Sword, developed by Ninja Theory and published by Sony a year after the PS3's launch. Well, the game definitely shows off the PS3's graphics capabilities. Apart from the odd graphical glitch or two, both the in-game animation and cutscenes look great in Heavenly Sword. But does the rest of the game equal that of the game's graphics? Yeah, I think it stands up quite well. You play as Noriko, a fierce warrior who has been shunned by her father and her people, but she still has a fiery determination to help her people in their time of need.
Trophies when skinned.
Enough! Climb the walls and keep watch.
As you command, Father.
The game is a very basic action game. It has a fixed camera, a fixed path and tons of enemies to slaughter. The only objective you are ever given is to make it from point A to point B while beating all of the enemies in your path. You're also awarded for your combos on enemies, which unlocks you bonus content. Combat is also pretty simple: strong attacks, ranged attacks and normal attacks. The controls are pretty unique though. You use two of the face buttons for different attacks and you hold down the triggers to change to and from ranged and strong attacks. What's weird is that there's no block button. To block, you do nothing. So you can't just button mash, you have to watch out for enemy attacks and stop attacking when they do. Once you obtain the Heavenly Sword, you can also use over-the-top super attacks which just destroy everyone. The game falls trap to resulting to QuickTime events for certain sections. Now, I'm the type of person who doesn't have a problem with QTEs, if it doesn't hinder the rest of the gameplay. The boss battles are a lot of fun and take quite a bit of skill, requiring you to use smart placements of strong and ranged attacks. Unfortunately, they are plagued with strict QTEs, which are not easy to perform correctly and really dampen the boss battles. Aside from these quick time events, the only time the game strays from the regular gameplay is during shooting sections. These sections require you to use the amazing 6-axis controller to guide your arrows or cannonballs. Now, this actually isn't too bad once you get used to it, but getting used to it is a whole other story. It requires precision and steady hands, and is something which will take a lot of time to pull off correctly.
It's so much better when you're angry.
What I do like about this game is the characters, especially the antagonists. The way the bad guys act towards each other provides nice comforting humour, as well as a feeling of shock when revelations are made. The villains are very much three-dimensional characters. Like with Devil May Cry, I didn't really care much for the overarching story. It was the types of characters and the interactions that they had with each other that had me gripped throughout the game. To sum up, Heavenly Sword is a pretty simple action game, but this isn't necessarily a bad thing. The gameplay has some good ideas within it, and the game is pretty fun for the 4 to 5 hours it lasts. It's very short. So if you're looking for a cheap game to quench your short-term thirst for killing things in a video game, you might want Heavenly Sword. It's good. Although I think the franchise is going to end where it began, as Sony seems to have dropped interest in this franchise as soon as the first game was released. Except for the spot that Noriko filled in the PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. Oh yeah, and Andy Serkis plays the main villain in this game. That is awesome.
What is your purpose, Noriko, exactly? To die valiantly? To shed blood for a worthless cause, perhaps? Well, whatever it is, it's over.
Are you dead? Not dead. Locked away. Out of sight, out of mind, not dead.
Ah!
I asked them to bring my boy to me.
Game number 6, Silent Hill Origins for PSP. Okay, enough of the kiddie shit. Now we get down to the real survival horror goodness. Silent Hill Origins. Ooh, just gives me chills saying the name. Silent Hill Origins was released in November of 2007 for the PSP. It was the first game in the series to be released on a handheld system, as well as the first game not released in the traditional canon.
Travis, you messed up son of a bitch. What you doing on my road?
Late on a gig, bud. I'm taking the shortcut past Silent Hill. Stopping for coffee as soon as I hit Brahms. I'm beat.
As the name implies, Origins was a prequel to the first Silent Hill. Now, here's a little of my own backstory. Until Origins, I had never played a game in the Silent Hill series. I'd played survival horror games like the original Resident Evil and Eternal Darkness, but never had I played a game more willing of the horror title than Silent Hill. For starters, the PSP never ceases to impress me with its graphics, and Silent Hill Origins is no exception. The drop in quality from the PS2 entries to this one is noticeable, but to a small degree, Silent Hill Origins still looks really great. One of the most important aspects that a survival horror game has to get right is the presentation, which is spot on in this game. The main part of the game is split up into 5 different locations: the streets of Silent Hill, a hospital, a sanitarium, a theatre, and a hotel. These interior locations are then divided into 2 halves: the regular world, and the other world. These places are creepy enough, but the other world takes it to a whole new level of scariness. The other world sections look like they've come straight out of a nightmare. There is a clear divide in ambience between the regular world and the other world. The regular world usually lacks any sort of music, and also usually contains light. The tension is caused by subtle sound effects and the rare chance of a monster sneaking up on you. In the other world, however, the scare factor quadruples. No light, an infestation of monsters, and a soundtrack which just screams creepiness. The music doesn't even sound like actual music. It just sounds like a bunch of sound effects have been mashed into something that doesn't even make sense, which completely adds to this game's what the fuck factor. The blend of these two worlds is excellent, and to progress further you have to venture into the other world on a number of occasions, and every time it was required, I took a deep breath, braced myself, proclaimed, "Oh shit," and then went into the mirror.
You're the girl from the fire. How did you...
The visual and audio designs work very nicely and create a game that I find myself uncomfortable playing at times. The only thing that wasn't super was the voice acting. For everything that's going on, the main character Travis seems a bit too calm and collected. He literally doesn't give any shits.
Alessa? She died?
The gameplay still features typical survival horror elements. You get the map that automatically fills itself out, which I absolutely love. I checked my map like 1,000 times before I finished this game. Also, you get 2 maps for each area, 1 for each world, so you have to work out what doors work in what worlds and how you can use this to your advantage. The game focuses heavily on exploration of the areas, as well as finding keys and solving puzzles, much more than it focuses on combat. With each area comes a series of new puzzles for you to solve. Fortunately though, most puzzles aren't too difficult, and I only remember having trouble with one puzzle. They're not too easy though, so you still feel like you've accomplished something when you solve them. I must admit, the puzzle side of this game is more fun than the combat. The combat is a little too simple. You basically just smack an enemy until they fall on the floor, then you deliver a finishing blow. When there are multiple enemies, it gets slightly more complicated because you won't always have time to deliver the finishing blow. Although, at this point, you'll probably have projectile weapons, which makes it easy. I spent most of the game stocking up on weapons and ammo, but never ended up using them. I just ran past most of the enemies because they respawn after certain story requirements are met, which made using my ammo seem like more of a waste. But then I ran into another problem, when you run out of sprint and start to waddle along. I recommend you save your ammo for the bosses. The boss designs are outstanding when it comes to their appearance. When it comes to fighting them, they're pretty much pushovers, especially if you're stocked up on ammo. The enemy design in this game is excellent, and you'll constantly be discovering new enemies throughout the game, and if they sneak up on you, it will make you jump. Unfortunately, your encounters with the enemies are rather foreseen though, as the screen goes fuzzy when they're nearby, so you have time to brace yourself. I would have preferred if this wasn't in the game, as it would make bumping into the enemies more surprising. While playing through the game, I wasn't entirely sure of the overall story at first, and didn't really get who the characters were, but I found out that the story is slowly poured in as you progress through the game. You'll feel like you know nothing at the beginning, but this is deliberate. The more you play, the more you find out. The story is a puzzle in itself. But since this is my first Silent Hill game, I couldn't tell you accurately how well it leads on to the other games in the series. Silent Hill Origins has a few issues, but overall the game is a fantastic horror game and fits very nicely into the PSP's library of games. I found that it was a great start into the series for me, and I really want to get a hold of the first game on PlayStation 1 and really dive into this series properly. If you're thinking of getting into the survival horror genre but are prone to being scared easily, then I perhaps would recommend Obscure or Eternal Darkness over this. Also, I apologise for showing you footage of the game. What I do like about the horror in this game is that it doesn't rely on jump scares like most modern horror games, but relies much more on building tension and leaving you on edge. For those of you without a PSP, the game was ported to the PlayStation 2, but I've heard that that version isn't quite as good as the PSP one.
I found a game down the toilet. I wonder why this was in the toilet. Oh, I know why. 'Cause it's shit.
The 7th game is Metroid Other M for the Wii. Shit game, moving on. The 8th game is... What, hang on. Okay, every game should get a chance, and this game's no different. Is it really a terrible game like most of the internet will tell you that it is? Actually, no, it's not. It's a good game. A really good game, in fact. At least I thought so.
Fancy meeting you here, princess.
Now, what's weird about Metroid Other M is that it's not developed by Nintendo. It's not developed by Retro Studios either. It was developed by Team Ninja, the team that are only known for the Dead or Alive and Modern Ninja Gaiden series, the team that are only known for a fighting game series and an action hack and slash game. We're going to take on the task of developing a Metroid game, a franchise that focuses heavily on exploration and atmosphere. Not only that, but they announced that this game was going to be story driven. Metroid games have had story, sure, but it's subtle and well crafted stories, not giant Metal Gear Solid cutscenes. It's safe to say that Other M would be a big departure from the series. Let's get the controversial part of the game out of the way first. It's true, a massive amount of your time will be spent watching cutscenes, and in that regard, this game is much more like Metal Gear Solid 4 than it is like Metroid Prime 3. I don't have too much of a problem. I like the way that both of those games handle their stories, so I didn't mind the cutscenes in Other M. Also, unlike what people say, I didn't have a problem with the voice acting.
I wondered what Adam thought of me. Out of nowhere, I suddenly found myself concerned with his opinion again.
I was upset that Samus wasn't voiced by Jennifer Howe, my favourite voice actress, like she was in the Prime series of games. But I don't have a problem with her new voice. She sounds like a girl. Oh wow, Samus sounds like a girl. Maybe that's because she's a girl? But I don't know, I may be talking crap.
Remember me?
Anthony.
The other voices are great too, in my opinion. The game also puts a heavy focus on character development and introduces some of the faces behind the Galactic Federation's armour. Most of these characters are likeable, and it's nice to finally get to know some members of the Galactic Federation. The game's story takes place after Super Metroid but before Metroid Fusion in the Metroid canon. The first cutscene shows this, so spoilers for Super Metroid if you haven't played it. But seriously, go play it, it's the best thing ever. If you've played Metroid Fusion, you'll know that there's a character that you never saw called Adam, who Samus had a deep connection with. This game shows that connection, and we actually get to meet Adam this time. Adam's actually a pretty stand-up guy, and Samus, being quite an isolated character, it's nice to finally see what happens when she does form a deep attachment with someone. This is what people dislike about this game, the fact that Samus actually comes off as a stereotypical woman in this game. You know, with emotions and periods and stuff. Here's my 2 cents on this. It was handled okay, but it could have been done better. I didn't mind Samus having 1,000 inner monologues explaining how some decisions pissed her off and how her respect for Adam outweighs her need for oxygen, but it occasionally got a little too over the top. There was one scene that I thought was just stupid. I won't say what it is to avoid spoilers, but if you've played the game you probably know what scene I'm talking about. It didn't make Samus look like a little girl, it made her look like a little bitch. Enough about the story now, what about the gameplay? It isn't bad. It's basically a 2D Metroid game in a 3D environment. Probably what everyone thought a Metroid game would look like on the Nintendo 64 back in the day. It mostly resembles Metroid Fusion as it's a pretty linear game and you get these navigation rooms that provide you with waypoints. It's not super straightforward though, it's still possible to get lost, just a little harder. Not to say that you can't stray from the path though. In regular Metroid fashion there are tons and tons of additional items that you can find hidden in some easy and some not so easy places. Only problem is though, you can replenish your missiles whenever you want, which makes finding them a pointless task. One cool thing they've introduced is energy parts, which are like pieces of heart from Zelda. That's pretty cool. What is dumb is that you no longer find your extra gear like the Ice Beam, Speed Booster, etc. You start off with them all, but they have to be authorized by Adam before you can use them. I guess they couldn't make up another reason for how clumsy old Samus lost all her stuff. The most unique part of this game is the control scheme. You play with just the Wii Remote on its side. You use the D-pad to run, the 1 button to shoot and the 2 button to jump. It's just as simple as the original Metroid, but a little more advanced. During combat you have to press the D-pad to dodge. I found that you can just wiggle your thumb on the D-pad and you'll more often than not dodge everything. The system is pretty broken. Also, there's no lock-on button, so it's sometimes hard to target who you want to without getting hit by another attack. Another thing you can do is point the Wii Remote at the screen to see in first person and use missiles. This is a pretty good idea, but again falls slightly flat as you can then no longer move. The controls certainly have their ups and downs. Simple yet limited, I think. It can sometimes be annoying, usually during boss battles. The game's combat certainly has that over-the-top actiony feel that you'll find in a game like Ninja Gaiden. I don't really mind this. The absolute worst parts of the game are when you are forced to use first-person mode in these stupid point-and-click sections. I seriously have no idea what I'm looking for. Overall, the core gameplay of Metroid Other M is great. It feels like a modern day version of classic Metroid games, and on that merit alone, it's worth a play. The story is exciting and grows deeper the more you play it. The appearance of certain characters and enemies will make any Metroid fan happy. Does it have its flaws? Yes, definitely. And they're hard to ignore. It probably is one of the worst Metroid games, but don't write the game off. The Metroid series has a very high standard, and a bad Metroid game, still a great game. Other M definitely has its place in the series. If you're going to play one Metroid game on the Wii, then of course I'd suggest Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. But if you've already played that, and you want some more from the series, then give Other M a go. I'm going to gladly go on record and say that I like Metroid Other M, and think it's a good game.
I gave him a thumbs up.
Pokemon, go!
The 8th game is Pokemon Black on the Nintendo DS. First thing to note, when I refer to Pokemon Black, I'm talking about both Pokemon Black and Pokemon White. Pokemon Black is a funny old game. It was released in 2010 in Japan for the Nintendo DS, mere months before the Nintendo 3DS was released. In the West it was released in March of 2011, mere weeks before the release of the 3DS. So why would Game Freak release a new generation of Pokemon on a nearly outdated hardware? Simple. Game Freak are extremely skeptical when it comes to change, and they almost completely oppose it. This is where most of Pokemon Black's problems lie. The game is practically identical to its predecessors Diamond and Pearl in terms of the engine. You will find some cool advancements like the flashy 3D scenery and the non-static sprites for the first time in a handheld Pokemon game, but at the game's core it is almost identical to Diamond and Pearl. Each new entry to the Pokemon series has a fresh coat of paint thanks to it being on the new hardware, but Black just doesn't have this. If you're an old school Pokemon fan who loves filling your Pokedex, throw everything you know about the first 493 critters out of the window, as this game features none of them. This game introduces 155 brand new Pokemon, and that's it. No Pikachus, no Zubats, no Tentacles, no Doug Trios, nothing. Throughout the main story anyway. After you complete the main story, you'll see some familiar faces pop up. This isn't really a bad thing. I thought the game may be reaching out for a new audience by introducing a new set of 150 or so Pokemon, and maybe throwing in the old ones may have been a bit overwhelming. Hey, Gen 1ers, how does it feel that today's children relate to Tepig the way that you relate to Charmander? Ooh, I bet that's got you all fired up. It's funny because the first time I saw some 5th generation Pokemon revealed, I was like, what the hell is this? But then I actually ended up using Vanillux and Klinklang in my main party, and now they're some of my favourite Pokemon. You do get used to them. But overall, I still think that the Pokemon they introduced in the 5th generation is probably my least favourite. So even though this game is very similar to Diamond and Pearl, it actually has some really cool innovations, like wild double battles. These are really useful for training lower level Pokemon. Speaking of which, experience points are more evenly distributed now, so that lower level Pokemon earn more XP, which is extremely useful. Also, you can reuse TMs now, which at first I was like, what? This isn't Pokemon? But then soon I was like, no, this is good, it should have been there from the beginning. And this game introduced triple battles. And seriously, someone tell me what they're like, because I didn't encounter one triple battle throughout the entire game. Some of the things I'm not so sure on are the things that make the game a little too easy. Doctors heal your health now out on the field. Okay, no need for potions then I guess. And poison doesn't damage you on the field anymore. Okay, then why am I carrying all these antidotes? Also, they removed Pokemon contests, which I actually enjoyed, and replaced them with the Pokemon musical. This is crap. You'd think that with all the dancing in this game, that at least one person would be doing the Mario.
Swing your arms from side to side. Come on, it's time to go. Do the Mario. Take one step, and then again, let's do the Mario all together now.
There are two things in this game that I absolutely love, and think that they are the strongest in the entire series. The first is the sound and the music. Not only are these tunes some of the best I've heard from any game placed onto a DS card, the battle music is also dynamic. If your Pokemon are low on health, the music will change to reflect this feeling of urgency. This is something that I'll always love about Pokemon Black, and for some reason they removed this from X and Y. Why? The second part of this game that shines greater in this game than any of the other Pokemon games is the story. Oh wow, is this game's story deep. You're given two rivals at the start, both of which choose the remaining two starters, which I thought was pretty cool. But your main rival is the anti-hero N. But he's not even the main bad guy, yet he works for the enemy team Plasma, who have the strongest motives in any Pokemon games, but motives that make the characters question their lives and if they even know what they're fighting for anymore. It's just a great story full of plot twists, symbolism, and a superb cast of characters. Even though this game doesn't push the series very far in gameplay aspects, the story alone makes this game worth a play. To me, Pokemon Black was a game that tweaked certain aspects of the series' mechanics to make the jump between Pokemon Diamond and Pearl and Pokemon X and Y less of a leap, as you'll see many of the new gameplay features of Black and White carry over to X and Y. Black and White didn't make me say wow when I first started playing, unlike every other Pokemon game from the main series. However, once you really get into this game and the story starts to unwind, you will start to notice just how much Black and White stand out from other Pokemon games, and do stand on their own. These games tend to get a little bit of hate, and I disagree with this hate. I think Pokemon Black and White are great Pokemon games. They just didn't impress me as much as the others. They're the only Pokemon games from the main series that I didn't get on release, but I'm glad that I've finally gone back to check them out. Gotta play them all. If, like me, you also skip these titles, I strongly recommend that you go back and check them out, for the story alone. But if you have yet to try out any Pokemon game, then man, go get X or Y.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna play some Wii U. Hey you. Oh Jesus. No, listen. Don't be scared. Right, I gotta talk fast because those bloody bastards are gonna be knocking on my door any second now. Right. Listen, you're gonna be bewildered by this and everything, but I just gotta tell you, the world is going to hell in an handbasket, and civilization, as you knew it, no, it's no more. Your friends, dead. Your family, dead. Everyone's dead. You're one of the last survivors, and I'm gonna get you through this. Believe me, you and me. I'm gonna get you through this. Right. So just, do you want to survive? I said, do you want to survive? Yeah, I'm listening. Right. Here's what you gotta do. You gotta listen carefully. And I ain't got time to explain it, so just, right. Next to the gamepad, there's a game. If you want to survive, you have to review that game. Right. Hold on. They're coming. Go. Oh, go.
Game number 9, Zombie U on Wii U.
Bangers and mash, fish and chip butter, oh god.
Zombie U, the long-awaited sequel to the well-praised, well-known fan-favourite game Zombie on the Commodore 64. Yeah, raise your hand if you've heard of that game. This game Zombie U, that formerly went under the title Killer Freaks from Outer Space, was Ubisoft's big exclusive launch title for Nintendo's Wii U. Good old family-friendly, cooking mama, imagine babies, yarn-loving Nintendo needed a big cricket bat to the face mature title in order to bring the hardcore gamer back to Nintendo's home console. They even produced a Zombie U Wii U bundle here in the Wii UK. So, did Nintendo achieve what they set out to? Did this game bring Microsoft and Sony fanboys over to Nintendo? Based on the Wii U's sales, no it didn't. Was that the game's fault? Not really. The game was okay, and in some regards pretty innovative and Wii unique. So, my home town of London has been overrun by a zombie invasion. You're one of the few survivors and you have to follow the help of some proper British bloke stranger guy that you don't even know, as it's the only little hope for survival that you'll have. The game is a semi-open world first-person shooter, but you can't just run around willy-nilly. You have to be very strategic about how you play. If you die, you are dead. You become a zombie. You then spawn as another survivor and off you go again. The only way you can get your stuff back is to find the zombie of the person you were just playing as and then steal your stuff back. The best tactic for this game is slow and steady. Conserve your ammo, you'll never know when you might need it. Now, this isn't Left 4 Dead. When you see zombies, they're usually in small quantities. But they're not easy to take down. They take at least 2 headshots or 6+ swings of the cricket bat. And your health doesn't regenerate. You really feel on edge when your health is low and there are 2 zombies nearby and all you have is a cricket bat. The game's very realistic in this regard. Well, I'd imagine. Sometimes it's best to pick zombies off when you know you're safe to. Otherwise, it's best to just run like hell. Never is it best to just charge in. The game definitely requires strategy. Of course, as a Wii U launch game, you'd expect the game to be very gamepad heavy, which it is, and it uses the gamepad very nicely. The gamepad acts as several things such as a map, a radar, a radio and a hub. You'll constantly be changing your view from the TV to the gamepad. be it to check for zombies, change your equipment, or to loot an enemy. And the game never pauses while you do any of this, which just adds to the tension of the game as you can't be changing weapons or reloading in the middle of a fight.
Go on, pick up the cricket bat. Don't be squeamish.
I also really like that the British bloke's speech comes through the gamepad rather than the TV. It helped me get engrossed in the experience. Another thing I have to praise about this game is the technical elements. Most of the zombies you run into have a unique appearance, and it's uncommon to run into multiple of the same zombies. Also, the game doesn't rely on cheap scares. The times I was most scared was when I felt helpless in the game, when I literally had nothing. I found this happen more often than not though. I'd say around 75% of the time I was using the cricket bat, which did get kind of boring sometimes. A more skilled player may not run into this problem as much as I did, but I mostly ran into this problem when a fucking exploding zombie snuck up on me and I panicked and smacked him with a cricket bat. This happened more than once. The game also has a pretty interesting 2-player versus mode. It's a type of territories mode but with a twist. One person plays on the TV with a controller and the second player plays on the gamepad. The person on the gamepad is in control of the zombies and can deploy them to their will in order to capture locations. They can also level up their zombies as the game progresses. The person on the TV plays the regular first-person game and must capture the territories whilst avoiding the zombies, and of course must conserve their ammo like single player. It gets pretty intense and it's a whole lot of fun. Zombie U is a pretty fun game, and a game worthy to be named a survival horror game, as it puts a huge emphasis on survival. It may not have achieved what it set out to, but that doesn't mean it's not a good game. If you own a Wii U and you haven't yet tried out Zombie U, it's pretty cheap now. It's definitely worth the £10 or so that the game asks for now.
Now you may be thinking, Jamie, you only showed off 9 games that you were going to review. Well, that's correct, I was going to review 9 games, I can count. But one day I was doing my usual business, I was out gardening, and I stumbled across something very peculiar. Something very peculiar indeed.
The 10th and final game is Pikmin 3 on the Wii U. Oh yeah, now this is my jam. My close friends know just how big a fan I am of the Pikmin franchise, but I don't think they all get it. I've loved this series ever since my little brother got Pikmin 2 on the Christmas that it came out. I got Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door. Oh man, what a great day that was. During the Nintendo Wii's life cycle, myself and many fans were eagerly awaiting the day that Pikmin 3 would arrive. Sadly, this wasn't the case. But never fear, when Nintendo announced their next generation console, the Wii U, one of the first games they announced was Pikmin 3, and my excitement for the console shot up. Pikmin 3 was one of my most anticipated games of the year. Did it disappoint? No it didn't. Unlike the previous 2 games in the series, Pikmin 3 doesn't follow the adventures of the Hokkaitation Captain Olimar. Instead, it focuses on 3 new protagonists, Alf, Brittany and Charlie from the planet Koppai. Their planet is running out of food supplies and our 3 heroes travel to PNF 404 in search of any food they can find. Not only do they find what they're looking for, they also discover the friendly yet fierce creatures, the Pikmin, who help them through their troubles of getting all the fruit back to the ship. And trust me, they run into a lot of trouble. At first I was disappointed when Captain Olimar and Louie got the boot from being the main characters. But after playing the game, I couldn't have been more wrong. Alf, Brittany and Charlie are just overflowing with personality. The way they act towards each other is just so funny and unexpected at sometimes. Charlie is the main leader by class, but he certainly doesn't have the highest status. Brittany seems to be the bossy one, as she always gets her way and is rather manipulative toward Charlie, who seems to have a bit of a crush on Brittany. Alf is my favourite of the three. He's very timid, shy and clumsy, but he knows how to get the job done and is, in my opinion, the true leader of the three of them. And don't worry, if you liked Oliver and Louie, Miyamoto didn't completely forget about them. Wink wink. The writing in the Pikmin series is always so witty and outstanding, and it's at its peak in Pikmin 3. So for those who haven't played a Pikmin game before, the gameplay is pretty simple. It's a strategy game that's simple to learn and pretty simple to master control wise. You have to control your little minions called Pikmin, and you lead them towards attacking enemies, carrying fruit back to your ship and all the rest. Each colour Pikmin has different ability. Red Pikmin are immune to fire, yellow Pikmin can conduct electricity, and so on and so forth. New additions to this game are Rock Pikmin and Winged Pikmin. Rock Pikmin are used to smash crystal structures, and they can also perform greater impact damage on enemies. Winged Pikmin are weaker than all other Pikmin, but can fly over areas that regular Pikmin can't, and they can also lift up certain structures. Both are great additions to the cast of Pikmin. Each type of Pikmin is as vital as any other, and at some points you'll have to use multiple Pikmin types in order to solve some puzzles. It can become pretty complex. The environments in Pikmin 3 are massive and much deeper than in the previous two games. This means that more exploration is required and more strategy. Some areas can get very complicated. The game has multiple control schemes, but forget all that, there is one clear definitive control scheme that you should use. That's the Wii Remote with Motion Plus and the Nunchuck, as well as the gamepad. Using the Wii Remote's pointer with the Wii Motion Plus attachment makes the controls super precise, which you're going to need when it comes to bosses and such. The gamepad is not even required to play the game, but it just adds another level of control. The gamepad provides a map, that's it, but it's all the gamepad needs to be used for, and it works flawlessly. You could just play the game like any old Pikmin game, and just glance at the gamepad every now and again to check your bearings, but more skilled players will use the gamepad in order to send one of their captains to do another job while another captain is gathering fruit, for example. Having 3 captains allows you to be much more strategic. One can get fruit, one can be collecting more Pikmin, and one can just be chilling by the ship. At some points, puzzles will require you to use all 3 of your captains. You may not think it, but increasing the amount of characters that you have control of from 2 to 3 adds a whole new level of depth to how you'll play Pikmin 3. There are also some other cool multiplayer modes in Pikmin 3. The Challenge Mode and Bingo Battle. In Challenge Mode, you and a friend have a limited amount of time to collect as much fruit as possible, or kill as many enemies as you can, all while building your Pikmin army. Bingo Battle requires both players to bring back items to the ship corresponding to a bingo ticket, while also building your Pikmin army. Both modes are very hectic and a whole lot of fun. Pikmin 3 was definitely worth the 9-year wait. It had the incredibly hard task to top Pikmin 2, but I think it just managed to achieve it. If you own a Wii U, Pikmin 3 is one of the most essential games on the console at the moment, and you simply must have this game if you have a Wii U. If you're a Pikmin fan and you don't have a Wii U, get a Wii U, it's worth it. So what am I doing now? Waiting for Pikmin 4 to be released, of course. Let's not have a 9-year gap in between games this time, please, Miyamoto. So guys, thanks a ton for watching, and I hope you enjoyed all these reviews and this entire video. So what I'm going to hopefully do, if this video goes well, I'm going to do this every year. So originally it was going to be a summer backlog. I was going to play through them in like the months of August and September and July, and then review them. But it took a lot longer to play through these games and to make this video than I initially thought. So each year what I'll just do is around July time I'll announce the games, and then when the review's done, probably sometime around November, like this video is being released. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching it, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and if you are subscribed, then this video took a lot of work, so a like would definitely be appreciated, and you know, share it with your friends and family, maybe they'll enjoy it. Also, please leave a comment and saying like which of these reviews you enjoyed, which one you didn't enjoy so much, maybe how some of them could be improved. Any feedback would be very appreciated, and thanks guys for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take care.